All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is Doug Morris, CEO of Sharesight. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Well, it's this afternoon anyway, here in Sydney, where I'm based. Hope everybody is having a lovely day and is staying healthy and managing to be productive working from home. Today's webinar will be about running reports in Sharesight. And if that seems like kind of an obvious topic, it is. But there are an array of reports that we make available inside the application. And we do feel that it is important for you to understand what you can get out of the reports, the features and options sort of that are kind of underneath the bonnet in various reports, and how those reports differentiate from the homepage of Sharesight, which is the overview page that most of us spend the majority of our time inside the product looking at when we're checking our portfolios. And if you need any help, please just email us at support@sharesight.com. So if you have a question following my presentation today, if I didn't have time to get to your question, or if you want some more information on anything about Sharesight, please contact us at support@sharesight.com, or just use the help tab and you'll find our customer forum and various ways to get in touch as well. So with that, what I'll do is I'll just jump into my portfolio inside of Sharesight. So just an important, I guess, disclaimer here. Number one is that Sharesight does not have an AFSL. So anything that I say on this presentation, anything I show inside of our application is pertaining to my own personal portfolio circumstances. Please do check with your accountant or financial professional regarding investment decisions or any taxation advice. This is just purely from a how I use the product standpoint for today's webinar. Also, the account that you'll be looking at for the webinar is an Australian portfolio, which is on our expert plan. And I say that because it depends on where you live around the world, and where you've set up your portfolio will dictate the reports that you have access to. And it'll also dictate the currency and various tax features that you have access to as well. But given that most of our attendees today are in Australia, and that's where I'm based, I'll be using an expert plan account for an Australian domiciled portfolio. And so most of the tax stuff that I'll talk to you today about does pertain to Australian investors, but some of it is applicable to investors in other tax jurisdictions as well. We will be running a series of webinars on tax a bit later in May and throughout June, as well as we reach the end of the Australian financial year. Right. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. So this is just a portfolio that I maintain called a core portfolio of blue chips. I've changed some of the holdings and the amounts to protect, I guess, some of myself from some of the bad investment decisions that I've made. But what we're looking at here is the overview page. And this is where most of us will spend most of our time on Sharesight checking our performance. And the overview page is really just a live assessment of your performance and the holdings in your portfolio. Whereas the reports on Sharesight are really designed to give you a way to capture and crystallize information for kind of three different purposes. We have our performance reports, we have our taxation reports, and we also have kind of our, I guess what I classify as our sort of utility reports that are useful at tax time for you or your accountant as well. So first things first, I'll just jump right into the performance report, which is probably the most widely used report amongst our user base. So the performance report is very similar in nature to the overview tab. The main difference is that you have full control over the time periods that you use, which you can set here at the top left-hand part of the screen. So if I wanted to widen out and have a look at my entire history of my portfolio, I could just select since inception here at the top, which in this case goes back about 12 years. There's a few other options to be aware of in this report as well. We allow you to toggle open or close positions. If you select close positions, that'll show you the impact on your performance of positions that you sold out of completely. You can toggle between percentage and monetary gains here as well. You can group by any of the default sector, industry, country classifications, or apply your own custom groups as well. And you can apply by filters. That's actually what I've done in this case. So you can see here that I'm using three basic filters just for today's demonstration: Australia, New Zealand, and US shares. And if I quickly wanted to say, hey, just show me the New Zealand shares in my portfolio, click NZ, save, and you can see here my loan position in Auckland International Airport, which has been quite a wild ride as of late, given the COVID-19 effect on markets. But you can imagine you can get much more detailed around labels. You can think of things like, maybe core satellite positions. You can label things around sort of like blue chip or bedrock holdings versus speculative holdings. You've got inside the manage area here, inside of labels, there's a whole array of use cases for labels. Also, just while we're on the performance report, you can't export any of our reports to PDF, Excel, or Google spreadsheets. They come out in really nice formats. This is a really nice way to share access with your advisor or your accountant or anybody else. They come out with our branding and some disclaimer text on them as well. So they do look quite professional, and they are quite useful to use. I use the Google Drive option all the time. We use Google Drive at Sharesight for all of our file storage and maintenance, and that's where I like to file my own reports away come tax time. All right, the next report that I will touch on is the taxable income report. Now, this report is called taxable income because most of the countries that we operate in, income from investments is indeed taxable. So be it dividends from companies, distributions from ETFs or managed or mutual funds, it is indeed taxable. But of course, that may not be true if you're investing either in a trust structure that's tax protected, like an SMSF or a 401k, or the Canadian or UK equivalents. But this report will be useful for you regardless, just to show you the income that is derived from your investment positions. So we call it taxable income report as a bit of a catch-all. So I'll go into that now. And this really is a workhorse of a report. I really like this report because of the optionality that it contains. And I'll get into some of this as well, especially given now that we are coming up to 30 June here in Australia, which is the end of our financial year. Okay, so this basically shows, in this case, my date range is 12 years. So there's a lot of information on this page. What I'll do is I'll just change this to last financial year, so we have a nice, realistic working example to draw from. Now, the way this report is organized, we have local income Australia, because that's where I am, and this is where my portfolio is based. We have our non-trust income here at the top, which is essentially dividends from companies. We have trust income here, which in my case are distributions from ETFs. We have foreign income, which are dividends and distributions from overseas investments. And if I had any discounted trust income or things like that, those would be classified below that as well. Just also a note here on the date range. You noted that when I came into this report, it was going back to the inception date of my portfolio. I just point that out because that is one of the most common questions that we and our support team get at Sharesight is, hey, I'm looking at this report and it looks like the data is incorrect, or it looks like something is missing from the reports, or it's different from another report that I've looked at in Sharesight. 9 times out of 10, that's because the date range on one report to the next is different, or it's been inadvertently changed if you're having a look at the report and kind of messing around with the date range. Just always please be sure to check the date ranges when you're running reports, because it dictates all of the data that's populated below. So just a little pro tip there on Sharesight. All right, so we've touched on date range, we've touched on how the report is organized. Just a couple of other little tips and tricks on this report. There's a couple of very powerful options hidden a little bit inside this advanced options menu. The first one I'll show is show comments. So if I tick that and apply, you can now see that I have an extra line for all of my distributions and dividends. And this is useful if you have something like what we've got here in this Westpac example. You can see that it's showing me dividend of 94 cents per share, which is just the automatically populated data from the ASX. But I've added in this here, which says this distribution contained a tax-deferred amount. Check with my accountant on how best to handle. Now that's fictitious. I've just entered in this tax-deferred amount right here of $23.45. But if you are showing comments, it's a nice way to call this out on the screen. And if you export this to any of the formats above, the comments will come out in that export as well. Also on taxable income, we've itemized all of these as per the distribution. If you click on one of these, it won't take you back to the holding page. It'll just open up that particular dividend, which allows you to examine all the components. So of course we have our franked and our franking credits and all of the miscellaneous components. You can see here the tax deferred amount that I've populated again, just for demonstration purposes. So you don't lose your place in the report. You can just go right back to the taxable income report. Moving down the page, just a couple of other things to call out, especially regarding ETFs. What I might do here, I'm just going to take away those comments to help have more of a concise view. All right, so back on ETFs. So ETFs are now growing significantly in popularity amongst investors worldwide, certainly investors here in Australia. I think 25% of all the trades that have come into Sharesight thus far in 2020 have been ETF buys and sells. So we've done a lot of work at Sharesight to better handle ETFs and their distributions, which can be quite nuanced if you've gone through a tax cycle as an owner of ETFs. So the first thing to call out is that ETFs will pay out distributions throughout the course of the year, maybe semi-annually, maybe quarterly, and often the final distribution will have an X date that actually falls outside of the financial year in question. So in this case, I'm looking at last financial year, but you can see here that for the iShares, IVV, and also IXJ and VAP, I have distributions with X dates of 1 July 2019. And this little information tooltip here shows you that this distribution is included in this period because the tax year for the ETF is based on when the fund income is earned. And therefore, you need to treat it for the previous tax year. And so the way these ETFs work is that after 30 June comes and goes for Australian investors, they then do their calculations, they finalize their books, and they may actually update the distributions back in time. That's been made further complicated by the AMIT regime. But we've done a lot of work in this area to collect the distribution components directly from ETF providers or the share registries. And so we'll actually just populate the components of these distributions for you here. And you can see the detail given here: foreign source income, AMIT decrease, and all the rest. But in the case that we don't receive the information, we have a really nice feature here where if you click Show Holding Totals in Advanced Options and apply, and I come back down to my my ETFs, we have this feature that's appeared, which is called Enter Annual Tax Statement Components. So if I click on that, this brings up this worksheet, which allows you to, based on your registry statement, and you'll recall, of course, those kind of rather ugly registry statements that come to you from Computershare and the rest in the post. You can actually enter the amount on those statements. So let's just say, for franked amount is $50. Sharesight will then go back and prorate that amount across the distributions you received throughout that tax year. And the feedback we've gotten from our user base and from our accounting partners is that this is certainly satisfactory for the ATO in this case. But again, please do check with your accountant before submitting any of this information that you've drawn from Sharesight. So this is a really useful feature in the case that those distribution components are not coming through into Sharesight automatically on your behalf. Just the other note, I have switched on the show holding totals there. What's really nice about this, it'll give you a subtotal line here per investment. So you can see my total for CBA, my total for Westpac, Woodside, and so forth, which I think is a particularly useful feature. The last just little comment here on this report is if I find, if you see a lightning bolt on any of these distributions and you hover over it, that'll tell me that this is an unconfirmed system created dividend, which is essentially another way of Sharesight telling you that you ought to go into this distribution and make sure that it's correct and confirm it. So we want to show it to you on the taxable income report, but we always encourage our users to confirm each dividend for accuracy as well. Oh, and finally in this report too, if you are reinvesting dividends and you've switched on that option within the holding page, those dividends will also be included in this report because they typically need to be considered for tax purposes as well. So there's quite a bit under the bonnet on the taxable income report. And again, we can get into more of this when we do our tax-focused webinars in the coming weeks. All right, staying on dividends for just a moment, I might turn to the future income report, which, surprise, surprise, will give you information on upcoming dividends. You can play with the date range here to kind of build this out. So let's just say we want to go out to September 30th of 2021. And let's say I want to show all transactions. So I've gone way out in the future. And what Sharesight is showing me now is all the dividends that have been announced that are upcoming. So we have our X dates here in this column, and then we have the ultimate paid dates here as well. So you can see in this case that I'm going all the way out to August of 2020, which is 3 months away for an upcoming dividend in a holding that I have in Clorox, for example. Right? As you would have noticed when I came to this report initially, there's an option here to show all transactions or show monthly totals. I like monthly totals. If you're investing for yield in terms of income, be it sort of income to supplement a salary or to income for retirement, you can get a view on a monthly basis as to the upcoming totals as well. I've gotten a lot of feedback on this report in terms of extending out the predictive ability of those dividends. That's something we're looking at right now. And again, I should just reiterate on all these reports, we'd love to hear your feedback. So please go to the help tab and get active in our community here on our community forum regarding what features you'd like to see added to our reports to help you. So that's future income there. Okay, I might jump from there into the diversity report, which is one of my favorite reports. Diversity report will show you the diversification of the holdings inside your portfolio, also thought of as asset allocation as well. So I've come here and you can see that I am looking at a sector breakdown of the holdings in my portfolio. You can also note that you can modify the date range here too. So you can do this as of today or at any point back in time. Below the pie chart as well, you have the percentage and dollar value breakdown of all of your holdings categorized as per the sectors. What I like to do though in this report is apply my own kind of personal asset allocation view. So I've set that up previously using the custom groupings feature inside of Sharesight. You can get that by going to account settings, custom groups, or you can just click on it here. So if I change this to Doug's asset allocation, which is kind of my own, little personal worldview of my portfolio, you'll see that now I have new categorizations in here. We've got core large cap, we've got core ETFs, international shares, some Chinese tech, cash accounts, and a newer one, which is kind of my COVID-19 exposure, which if I scroll down here are companies that I'm currently invested in that I think will benefit from the pandemic that we're seeing now. So just put that in there as an example for today, is to show you kind of the flexibility and the way that you can change these things on the fly. All right, the next report that I will show is probably contribution analysis report. This is one of my favorite reports. This can also be thought of as performance attribution as well. This will show you the impact that each constituent in your portfolio has, and it'll explain the contribution or the detraction to your overall return, both in percentage and in dollar amount terms. Again, you can change the date range here, and we'll show you this in a graphical representation, and we'll show you this in a data table below. So I like to do two things here. I like to look at my own asset allocation. So if I switch to that again, and then I got this is quite a longer time range here, so that doesn't give me exactly the granularity that I want. So if I wanted to look at, say, past 7 days, it'll show me a bit more of a narrow view. But what I like to do, especially here, is opt to not group at all, which then shows me every holding in the portfolio, and it'll explain to me very clearly the amount that each holding has contributed or taken away from my overall portfolio. And again, the data table below will respond to the inputs at the top. And you can also stack rank any of these columns as well. So you can see in percentage terms, Apple has been my best performer in the history of this, this time range here. Okay, before I jump into the capital gains tax reports, which are the CGT and the unrealized CGT, I might just make a quick mention of 3 reports that kind of don't get a lot of attention, but are really useful at the right time of year. All trades is exactly what it sounds like. It's all the transactions that you've input into Sharesight from entering trades manually. It'll capture all trades that you have coming in from our contract note feature, spreadsheet uploads, or from any of our connections that you have with our broking partners as well. It's a really useful report at tax time. I always get asked by my accountant, hey, we need to see all the transactions you made in the financial year. I go to this report, I set the date range, I export to Excel, and it's done in about 30 seconds. Now, we hope, obviously, that because you're using Sharesight, we hope that that you share access with your accountant, which you can do here. And that, you know, when they're asking you for that all trades report, they're not going off and kind of recreating the wheel by inputting all that data into some other software system with their own spreadsheet. But oftentimes they do need the paper trail, of course, on your transaction activity. And that's really useful to do. Another little kind of pro tip here is that if you ever want to recreate a portfolio, because you want to, I don't know, just sort of reset up your Sharesight account, or you want to create a new portfolio and then use the vacated portfolio for something else. If you run an all trades report and you go back to the inception date, so since inception, and you export this, you can then re-import that file to create that new portfolio. And it's a very straightforward process, as Sharesight will recognize the file and the structure of the file, and it'll allow you to kind of create a facsimile of that portfolio quite easily. Sold securities report is exactly, again, what it sounds like. It's essentially all of the sell trades that you've made in any given period. And the historical cost report is really an accounting kind of report that can be used for balance sheet preparation. It'll show you opening balance and closing balance at any given point in time. So if we go to, say, last financial year, it'll show you purchases, cost of sales made during the period. You can see I haven't really dispersed with anything recently. And kind of conveniently, it'll show you the disparity between the balance and the closing market value at that period as well. All right, so finally, we'll then jump into the CGT report and the unrealized CGT report. Again, this is as per Australian taxation laws, given how, you know, where my portfolio has been set up, but we have been rolling out our CGT reports in other markets as well. So this should at least give you a flavor of kind of how the report will work for our other markets too. So the capital gains report. So again, we're looking at last financial year in this case, and what I might do here is just widen this out, given I'm kind of a buy and hold investor with a longer time horizon. I don't do too much selling, at least I haven't lately. So I'll just go out to the entire history of the portfolio there. And now you can see there's a bit more activity in this report. So this is organized by your short-term capital gains, your long-term capital gains, discounted capital gain distributions from ETFs, and capital losses. And what I like about this report especially is the nice summary table that we show at the bottom, which kind of has that nice equation field to show you exactly the summary of the above capital gains or losses in the portfolio. A couple of things to mention here as well. So again, date range, which I've kind of just shown. Advanced options, there's an option to apply a carry forward loss. So if you have losses previously that you want to carry forward and apply as a discount, if you like, you can enter those here and it'll be applied. But the very powerful feature of this report is the sale allocation option by clicking this button here. We allow investors to change the sale allocation either at the holding level or at the overall portfolio level. And again, this is an Australian specific, really it's a tax feature, locally. It's one of the only remaining markets in the world where investors can actually reorganize the parcels of shares that they've bought and sold in the investments that they hold to optimize the tax that they pay. And so you can do this again at the holding level or at the overall top level of the portfolio. So we allow you to select FIFO, LIFO, maximize gain, minimize gain, or minimize CGT. A lot of you may have been using a spreadsheet before finding Sharesight, and you're used to manipulating those parcels. Particularly if you're an accounting professional, you may have software or a spreadsheet that allows you to change parcels. We don't let you do that at the underlying parcel level. What we try to do here is use our maximize and minimize options to actually do that on your behalf. So it'll automate and reorganize those parcels to provide you with a similar, if not the same, return and the same outcome. So just in this case, just to kind of show this, I've got this short-term capital gain in shares of zero that I bought on the 12th of March this year and dispersed with, just a short time later for a gain of about $55. So that's classified now as a short-term capital gain using the LIFO methodology. If I change this to FIFO, however, and I update the report, I'm going to get a warning because this may change calculations that I've used for, filing tax. You can now see that my zero has gone from a short-term capital gain to a long-term capital gain because Sharesight has automatically, found those older units of zero that I've held. You can see the purchase date here dating back to 2016, the gain date, and again, a bigger gain, right? So I'd encourage you to spend some time playing with the sale allocation methodology, which can give you quite a different return and may indeed reduce the tax bill at the end of the day. Switching over to the unrealized CGT report. This report, does exactly what it says that it does. It's kind of an open-ended report that shows you the unrealized gains that you might make or losses as well. So here you've got short-term capital gains, long-term capital gains, and capital losses. I think of this report really as kind of a hypothetical, what if I sold X or Y, especially in these volatile markets. I like to keep an eye on this report almost on kind of a daily basis, it would seem these days. I think a lot of us are looking at a lot more red numbers in Sharesight than what we've been used to seeing in the past, given what's happened since early March. And, it's really important as investors that we keep an eye on, these total losses and, how these might actually contribute and sort of be used as a credit against the tax that we might have to pay. And you can see here down in the summary table, we're showing those offsets here in those red numbers. So just a really useful report for keeping an eye on what you might do in terms of portfolio planning. Again, you can change this date here. This is just an as-at date, so it's only one date. You have the carry forward loss option here as well. And again, you can modify the sale allocation methods as well, which is particularly powerful if you're kind of looking out into the future as to what you might do with your portfolio. Right, so that was a very quick tour of, in this case, the 10 reports that are available in the Australian Expert Plan. I hope that was useful for you. I might just turn to questions now, as we've got a few in here, and I'll answer those. Just a quick kind of mention on some of these questions. Sometimes we get questions regarding a specific sort of situation or a calculation. We don't want to sort of comment on people's individual portfolios or situations. So again, if you want some comfort or some more information on a particular calculation inside of your portfolio, please do get in touch with us via that help tab. Somebody says, does the percentage return always refer only to the time period selected? Yes, it does. So again, that time period will dictate all of the information that is populated at the bottom. So it will change that, which is very important to know, and which certainly will change the information you see on a report if you're looking at a financial year versus what you might be used to looking at on the overview page if you're looking at a sort of a point in time until today, for example. Is it possible to customize the reports freely? No, it's not possible to, I guess, create a report in terms of, customizing columns and things like that. We try to kind of create a set that's useful for you, sort of straight out of the box or off the shelf. Any kind of customization would need to be done by exporting and using Excel. When running diversity reports and others, it shows upgrade to run report. Yeah, so just to have a look at what reports are available in what plans and the pricing. If you want to go to account settings and you can go to change plan, you'll see a comparison there of our plans and the reports that are available within each. Is Sharesight suitable for options? We do not cover options at the moment. Some listed options you can use and you can actually add to your portfolio, although we really haven't built the product to be suitable for sort of a heavy-duty options trader, although that feedback, we have gotten that before, and so we may build out that functionality over time. The question here, can you set a price alert on a share? Yes, you can. That is in settings, the settings menu, and you can then set your price alerts to get emailed about price changes going forward. Question here, I have incomplete data for transactions prior to 8 years ago. Is it possible to exclude as desired the inception date? I guess just to kind of answer broadly about history and portfolio setup, which is certainly an important question and one that we get a lot. We have about 20 years of history available in Sharesight in terms of historical price and dividend data. Now, if you go back 15 years or 8 years back in time, that will create a lot of information in the system, right? So you'll have some really nice performance history in there, but you'll also have a lot of distributions and corporate actions and dividends that you ought to check as well. So kind of the longer you go back in time, the more time you'll need to spend ensuring its accuracy. The alternative to that is just to begin with an opening balance, which you can do in our software as well. So you can add a share using an opening balance, usually at say 1 July if you're in Australia, or you can also upload an opening balance spreadsheet using our bulk import feature as well. Can we day trade with Sharesight? Can it handle large numbers of trades? It can handle a fairly large number of trades. There is a limit, of course, but yeah, it is suitable for buy and hold investors and investors who trade rather frequently. Although there is certainly a limit where we're not going to cater for people who, are running a sort of an institutional, sort of quant type trading system. Is there a report which shows current PE? We do have some limited information on various holdings inside of each holding page. Although again, if you're looking for, really detailed PEs and other sort of share-based information bordering on opinion or analytical information, have a look at other sources. Our friends over at Morningstar do some really good work at this. You can also check out the Motley Fool as well for a whole range of ratios and things like that. Question here around dates. I've set my tax year to end on 30 June, yet the report for the financial year shows start date at 1 Jan. That sounds to me like the tax year is to end on 30 June, which is Australia, but perhaps the portfolio has been set up as an American portfolio in USD, where their financial year goes from 1 Jan to 31 December, just without kind of knowing the specifics of the situation. That's probably what's happening there. So just check to see in your settings tab where indeed the portfolio is domiciled, and that will then instruct the financial year settings that you use in terms of current or past financial year. Right. Okay, well, there are no more questions in the Q&A inbox. With that, I'll wrap up. I just want to say thank you to everybody for taking the time to join us today. I hope that was a useful and quick run through on the reports available inside of Sharesight. Again, if you have any questions about reports and any calculations specific to your portfolio, please do get in touch with us by using the help tab and the features therein. Thank you very much.